Recognizing the member for North Vancouver-Lonsdale.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. I applaud the member for North Vancouver-Seymour's on her earlier statement. I cannot express how thrilled I am to know that we now have members across multiple parties across the entire North Shore who support public transit as the way forward. I think it is absolutely safe for me to say that my colleagues in North Vancouver-Seymour and West Vancouver-Capilano will definitely agree with me when I say that traffic and transportation is a major issue for us on the North Shore. Rising housing prices and the insufficient number of jobs that pay well enough for a person to both live and work on the North Shore have turned our beautiful segment of the Lower Mainland into both a commuter town and a town into which workers commute to. The traffic numbers certainly show it. The major growth in traffic over the Second Narrows Bridge over the last 12 years has been into the North Shore in the morning and out of the North Shore in the evening, demonstrating that much of our traffic woes are produced by those who work on the North Shore, or rather produced because there are so many people who work on the North Shore but aren't able to live in it. You see, traffic congestion and housing affordability are intricately connected issues. So what can we do about it? I absolutely echo the member for North Vancouver-Seymour's earlier statement. Public transportation is the key, and that's why it was a central theme in my election campaign as well. Urban planners and engineers around the globe have known it for years. You cannot build your way out of urban congestion with more roads and bridges for vehicles. We've seen it time and time again. The more lanes that exist for vehicles, the more vehicles we see on the roads. The solution for congestion-riddled areas like the North Shore and many other areas of the Lower Mainland is to invest in a diversity of transportation modes that include safe cycling infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure, and particularly public transit. Reliable, accessible, financially economical, and frequent public transit is our key to urban mobility and, yes, even housing affordability. After all, the fact that you work 10 kilometers away from where you work matters a whole lot less if you can get there in 20 minutes or less for a very reasonable cost. What's particularly exciting about public transit is that it doesn't even take a massive mega project to have a substantially positive impact on the North Shore. The Second Narrows Bridge carries approximately 130,000 vehicle trips per day, and according to vehicle traffic counts, the increase in the average daily number of vehicles between 2005, when traffic on the North Shore was a lot more reasonable, and 2015, when it wasn't, is only about 3,000 vehicles a day. 3,000 vehicles. That's all we have to clear from our highways to bring traffic levels back to the far more tolerant 2005 levels. After too many years of stalling on public transit investments, however, we have a lot of work to do to make it work for the North Shore. We have to fund the 10-year mayor's vision and then look immediately to the development of next steps, one that takes areas of Metro Vancouver, like the North Shore, into account and encourages the kind of smart growth required to bring bigger and better forms of rapid transit to the North Shore. These conversations are happening, and they have been happening for a while. The conversation that the member of North Vancouver-Seymour has added her voice to is so important. We as a society have grown so car-centric that we somehow have allowed ourselves to fall into the trap of believing that personal vehicles are the only way to get around in an urban setting, that failing to invest every transportation dollar into roadways is somehow a disservice to society. I absolutely insist it is not. We must recognize that when it comes to transportation planning, the goal is to move as many people and as much goods around as possible, as time efficiently as possible, for as little money per trip as possible, expending as few GHGs as possible while ensuring safety is a core consideration. Doing that means being more what I might refer to as being mode agnostic and mode diverse. Cars, bikes, buses, trucks, trains, gondolas, ferries, sea buses, and shoes, they are all valid ways to get around. It is not about cars, it is about people, and people can move around in a whole lot of different ways. For the North Shore, our commitment to public transportation as a way forward is absolutely critical. And you know what? Whether it's more sea buses, more buses, new routes, or aspirational concepts like underwater tunnels for transit, SkyTrain to the North Shore, or more, it's time for us to shift the conversation from the question of how we move cars around to how we move more people around. And that's why we must also commit to encouraging active transportation options as a way to allow people the choice of leaving their cars at home so that existing roadway capacity can be better utilized for goods movement and use by people who depend on their cars to get around. If done properly, biking infrastructure is an effective way of keeping cars off of our roads. Let's be absolutely clear, however, being pro-public transit and pro-active transportation doesn't mean that the family of 6 that depends on their car to shuttle their children to school and soccer games should be forced to leave their car at home. It means that the options to allow other people, like myself, to get off of the roadways and onto my bicycle or onto a bus is available so that that family of 6 can get around in their vehicle more quickly. It also means that the ability for their children to travel by bus on their own when they are old enough and responsible enough exists so that their parents are not transporting them around until they have their own driver's license or their own vehicle. It is about choice. It is about health. It is about freedom. It's about people. And now is the time, with agreement from North Shore MLAs that represent both sides of the House, that we must invest in public transportation and move forward on it with urgency. We now have the conditions required to make up for lost time. So let's get on it, and let's get the North Shore moving again. Thank you.